We are going to get started. Thank you for joining us here today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Wendy Adam and I'm the Director of Programs with Mennonite Central Committee, Ontario. It is my privilege today to introduce today's Lunch and Listen speaker. And this is my colleague, Lyndsay Mollins Koene, who is MCC Ontario's Indigenous Neighbours Program Coordinator. Lyndsay has been working with MCC for over 25 years and works out of our Timmins office, which is in Timmins, Ontario, which is in the middle of the province. I know many of us think of that as Northern Ontario, but if you actually look at a map, Timmins is about central to our large province. And as many of you know, earlier this year we celebrated 25 years of MCC's presence in our Timmins office. It was great to be part of that event. Through Lyndsay's role as program coordinator, she partners with a number of First Nations and Indigenous organizations throughout Ontario with the purpose of pursuing relief, development, and peace. Lyndsay has a Master's of Education and a great deal of expertise. However, she feels that it is the traditional knowledge that has been shared with her by her Indigenous teachers that has brought life to the education and work that she does with many communities. Lyndsay lives in the Timmins area with her partner Job and children Christian and Amanda on the traditional territory of the Matagami First Nation as part of Treaty 9. In today's session, she will be sharing some information about a recent project that took place at Six Nations in partnership with Mennonite Disaster Services and the Woodland Cultural Center. Please join me in welcoming Lyndsay.
Okay, I've got to do the clip thing, guys. Can you hear me, Sheila? Okay. No, well, thank you for this opportunity, actually, to come and talk to you folk, the majority of my colleagues here in the Kitchener office. It's not often that I get to do this, and I was saying to someone, it's been a while since I've done a lunch and learn, like a long while. And so a lunch and learn is a treat. So someone watch the clock for me and give me 5 minutes left, Lyndsay, because, or Shua or someone, because I tend to go on, because I'm a little passionate about the work, that's all. Now I need to start today by offering someone a free opportunity with a little caveat of responsibility. But on Saturday, you may know that we are hosting our Mile in My Moccasin workshop, one of them. We have 25 attendees, it's full, registration is full. And we've had a little glitch with some staffing. So I'm just wondering, we would like to offer this group the opportunity to come for the full day Saturday, that's 9:30 until 3:30, sort of. And we would give you a registration so that you could make moccasins as part of that event, because it's very short notice and we would appreciate the extra hands and bodies in the room. So come to me, I'll be here for the rest of the day, and just get a hold of me if that's something that might interest you. All right, so on to business at hand. So we had a little mix up with topics and so on, but we finally came to it because a lot of people, how many people here actually went to or knew someone who was part of Save the Evidence this summer in the room? Yeah? Okay, not too many. So Save the Evidence, so we're looking at the Mohawk Indian Residential School, part of the Six Nations territory, and it is now on the land of the Woodland Cultural Center, and that is the museum, and you may have been there and may have seen this building. And so we'll just advance. So I want to begin by talking about the evolution of community development, because I mean, here is one of those moments where no, it's not going to happen next month. No, it's not going to happen next year. Yes, but it will happen. And so, it was that constant work and communication and meetings and energy from all parties involved. So just a little bit about the school, that it operated from 1828 to 1970, and thousands of Indigenous children walked through that school as part of it. So part of the story coming from Six Nations was they talked to their membership. And as one of the oldest schools in Canada, and one of the, most children, the greatest number of children is what I'm trying to say, walked through this school. Members of Six Nations said, we do not want to demolish that school. We don't want to retrofit it as office space, as apartments. And so they said, we want to retrofit that. We want to refurbish it as the school that it was, the school that we attended, because we do not want Canadians to forget what happened here. And so that was a really important moment for Six Nations. And that was one of the first things during my initial meeting that has stuck with me as to why, the purpose for this project that took 2.5 years to develop. And so the invitation came to MCC way back, 2.5 years ago. And then MDS was brought on very quickly, and which was a lovely synergy of energies. They brought skills, energy. They brought some of the logistical thinking that needed to be put in place. And we came along with some of the sensitivities and so on that needed to be in place. And so it worked well, and a partnership, of course, with the Woodland Cultural Center. So this three-way partnership happened. So yes, timing, resources, leadership, all of that put in place, and off we went. This is our first meeting with the MDS crew on board, so my second meeting. And Paula, one of the executive directors, pulled out a map that her uncle had made, a drawing that her uncle had made of the grounds of the residential school. And so it was very special to her because he had attended and was a survivor. And it talks about, where the vegetable gardens were and the apple orchards were and where the farm was and so on and so on. And so it's maps like these, and you can imagine the recollection of each survivor would be very, very different. So it's been quite a process for the staff at Woodland, taking all these maps and all these recollections and popping them together, putting them one on top of each other and trying to come up with what they want to develop as this new space that remembers. And so here we have, on the right, we have Nick, who is the Ontario rep for MDS, and myself, and Martin, who is also, I think, vice chair with MDS and in Ontario. Can anyone correct me there? But there we are in front of the school, and you'll see there's scaffolding. So this three-phase project first worked at the roof, then it worked at some of the infrastructure, everything from plumbing to electric to some of the things you'll see around going on there, to some of the inside pieces, the aesthetics, and that's some of what we worked on. And so here we have the signing of the MOU, and these three are actually at the relief sale this spring, signing the MOU. And so it was a moment. It was a really happy moment, right, Wendy? Because we had come through a lot as a group, 3 organizations wanting to make it happen. So the project took shape. So, the MDS records that this particular project, and we kept hearing from Winnipeg because that's where people go to register for the Youth Summer Project, the MDS Youth Summer Project, that happens every year, a 4-week moment, that it was the most popular project on record. And we found that very interesting, and I'm going to keep reminding Nick of that when I ask him to help me with something up north. Anyway, so yes, for the month of July, there were 4 different groups, and working hard. The projects defined were raising a longhouse, and quite literally raising it out of the ground. It had sunken, and it needed a new roof as well. So that was part of what was done. There was an archaeological dig every Wednesday, and these were 4 different groups, not the same consecutive group. So different churches, different leaders, etc. So every Wednesday there was an archaeological dig, and then, putting back a library into the new school that had been refurbished, and with the new shelving, etc. And then the construction of the desks that the children actually sat on, the best recollection that could be brought forward by survivors was used. As well, the dining tables. And the dining tables were incredibly important to survivors. And we'll talk about that in a sec. So here's the big toolbox that sat there most of the summer, the MDS toolbox, and I just thought it was sort of something. There's Nick when we were trying to work out desks and figure out what should it look like. Here's an old desk from this era, and would bring it over to the Woodland Cultural Center. They would take it to survivors. Survivors would look at that and come back with, okay, no, we didn't have those metal things along the side of our desks. We didn't have the metal bracing. Our desks looked plainer. And so things like that happened, over this 2.5 years. And I just am showing you some architecture from inside the school. It was quite magnificent. And I remember this Facebook post I put up when I shared that picture, and what I shared was how something so magnificent and with so much care and love that went into it could be part of a building that was the opposite, really, because inside the building that wasn't going on. Can people hear me? Can everyone hear me? Okay. So then things started to happen, even in our first week. I was there for the first and last weeks of the 4, and I've got to lift up my staff right now. Isaac was there for the 2 weeks in the middle. Candace Booz and Mim Harder sort of scattered through all 4 weeks and, took time off as they needed to. And so I have to say, as far as working a project, it was probably the most tiring, but in a good way, that we'd ever done as a program. So here are the gents celebrating these new desks at the Woodland Cultural Center. And so this is the first desk that came in, and the people from the community and the staff wandered around this desk for hours because it symbolized so much. It wasn't just a desk. And here's Nick and another volunteer working on the tables, the dining tables, and in the basement, in the mush hole, which was the other name for this residential school, because they ate porridge morning, noon, and night, okay? In the mush hole, there were tables for the children And the boys and girls, of course, were separated. But these tables were identified as something that must be built by MDS. And when MDS asked why the tables, they said, well, that dining area was the only place that we could see our siblings during the day. Otherwise, we were separated on different wings of the building, the girls and the boys. I could see my brother, I could see, maybe my sister who was younger had to sit at a different table. It was the only time that you could smile across a room or say hello. And so those tables were amazing. And they were at the closing event that we had. There were 6 of them, and it was beautiful to see the survivors sitting in them at these tables. It was awesome. The archaeological dig. So this is the archaeological team at the table with one of the survivors, Geronimo, the gent on the right. And so they were finding, our 4 different groups, were finding pre-contact material. Pre-contact meaning material that would have been there before settler people came to Canada. So that was pretty special for these folk. And because we're MCC, but not just because we're MCC, because we're Indigenous Neighbours, a big chunk of our work is building relationships. And that's what we set out to do as well, for our part anyway, was to build relationships, new relationships, and so we went at that. So the relationships were not just with community members, they were with the 7 different youth groups that attended, and this was awesome. They were all from Ontario, except for one youth group from BC. So that was quite excellent, that we had Ontario people wanting to work at this Ontario project, because MDS caters to the entire country with their projects. So that was awesome. The people that helped with materials and lumber and so on, and that even pre-cut a few things, we are very thankful to them and building relations with them. And so that was sort of the Markham Mennonite group, as well as Old Colony group, did a lot of that work, and we're very grateful to them. To MDS, who we have begun building new relationships with. And so Nick and I have to go to coffee sometime in the north and, talk things. But I mean, yeah, Nick is a lovely, lovely man. And so I feel so grateful to have built those relationships amongst the MDS workers. To, the Woodland staff, who were always there for us and always teaching our groups. So a large part of what we did was education. We had a large orientation on the Mondays, and Wednesdays was a celebration of dance. And so they were there for that, and their staff plugged in and joined. And so we were grateful for that. And, the survivors and elders were present as teachers and told us amazing stories, unforgettable stories. And as well as our Indigenous Neighbour staff, who I again would lift up. So, we have, this is a student. She was working at the center and just with us the whole time. Really latched on to us and just loved her, Serena. This is one of our dancing evenings, and so there's a dance that will happen, and the gents are playing rattles, and then we switch, and the women play the rattles and shake the rattles, and so we learned some dances, and that was lovely. Again, here's Geronimo, one of the elders on the left, Geronimo is a unique elder in that, as a survivor, was at the school the longest of any student and never ever went home. So when the students would leave for Christmas or when the students would leave for summer holiday, Geronimo didn't, because his parents didn't come and get him. So, yeah, he's written, there are a number of written pieces on the side of the school saying, I survived, help me, pieces like that. And Geronimo, they've given him a brick, you know, and they said, write on this, Geronimo, write your sentiments down. And so that was lovely. And then we have Carly. Now, Carly was, you saw her in one of the other pictures during the signing, but Carly was very instrumental and walked a tightrope between the three of us, and worked very hard at making everything as smooth as possible during our time together there for the 4 weeks in July. And there's Serena again. So building relationships involved the youth. Here's Geronimo, just storytelling. And a bunch of youth pulled up chairs and stopped working. And that's, you know, a lot of what we said to MDS especially, is we're going to have to do that out of respect for the elders and the survivors, is sometimes put down our hammers and you know, pick up our ears and make it a listening moment and a learning moment. That's what this is about, as much as, you know, doing the work. So I'm going to end right now by talking about a history that we should not forget, no matter where it is in the province. And I just want to mention that, you know, in the province of Ontario, we had a lot of Mennonite run. We had a lot of residential schools. So there were 15 schools, approximately, throughout Ontario, and 13 of them were in the north. But this is one of the ones that was in the south. But I mean, as you'll hear, if you're here for the moccasin making workshop, you'll hear Madeline speak about St. Anne's, which is in Fort Albany. I mean, which is one of the most horrific residential schools in Ontario. So no matter where the residential schools are in our province, whether they're, you know, down the road like Six Nations is, or whether they're, you know, a flight away or a flight or two away, like our Mennonite run residential schools. So that's Poplar Hill, Sterling Lake, and Crystal Lake, that we need to remember that. So more than 600 students walked through the halls of the Mennonite run residential schools. And Mennonite Central Committee has been working now for 8 years with survivors and with some of that structure of bringing together the voices of survivors. And that's been most excellent. Such a gift and rewarding experience for us as workers. And we continue to remember the communities that live in pain, because those schools were very recent. They didn't open in the 1800s, they opened in the 1900s. And so the survivors are younger, and they're still dealing with a lot of pain. So 16 different First Nations in the Northwest, in the remote Northwest, so plane rides, were affected by the Mennonite residential schools. So I've got a few photos so that we can move from the south to the north, okay? 3 minutes. So this is Poplar Hill. That's the building, that's Poplar Hill. And we need to not forget, because of people like Carolyn and Lydia. Carolyn's on the left and Lydia's on the right. She's from way up north and Caribou Lake. Yeah. And this is a gathering that we hosted. These are all, not all of the survivors, but these are all survivors from Mennonite residential schools. And that's why we do this work. So I want to thank you all very, very much. Are there any quick questions? We have 3 minutes, yeah? Or 2 minutes or something?
2 minutes, yeah.
Sorry, maybe you just want to think on that or not. Greg.
What were some of the takeaways that the students talked about? Can you just repeat that in the mic as well?
We would have, so part of what MCC did, I didn't touch on this, the education piece, is there was a debriefing almost every night. And 3 of the groups, 3 of the different weeks did the blanket exercise. And during those debriefs, we would hear a lot about their day. So a lot of struggle, but a lot of positive feedback about, gee, like I didn't know, everything from that to, how can we work at this? Like, how can we keep working at this,
So thank you very much, Lyndsay, for that inspiring presentation. It's great to hear about the work that took place this summer, but also the ongoing work that is before us in terms of building relationships with our First Nations and remembering and coming to some kind of reconciliation in regards to the residential school system and all of the colonialism and effects of that in this province. So thanks for inspiring us to continue along that road. Lyndsay will be here for the rest of the day, so if you have other questions for her, you can certainly be in touch with her now and throughout the day. But please join me in thanking Lyndsay for her powerful presentation.